The meeting of the Dudley-Charlton Regional School Committee is now in session. It is Wednesday, September 25th. It is 7 p.m. We're at the Charlton Middle School, and we will all stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we get started, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Irene Scheffler. And she was a cook for many years with the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District, and Kathy and I remember her. And she passed away. So let's have a moment of silence. Approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of Wednesday, September 11th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Approval of the warrant. This evening, we do have warrants to be signed. Citizens Forum. Do I have anyone this evening? Communications. Steve?
Madam Chair, I don't have any communications this evening.
Okay, and I do not have any. And how about our members? Catherine?
I got this afternoon from Ashley Gustafson. You may remember her. She's a teacher that's on leave this year to go out and pursue a different career. And she just sent me an update today. She wanted to just give me a little background on what she's doing, and a couple of Shepherd Hill students have done well since they graduated in June. So I'll just read this verbatim from her. I just got it. Her name of her program is Navigating Through Quicksands. It's a new workshop that is called Curriculum to Care. It's focused on reminding teachers the importance of human connection instead of grades. There are so many demands placed on educators to achieve standards and produce high test scores for their students. However, as the school year progresses and classrooms get busy, it is crucial to stay connected to students by stating the phrases, "How are you today? Are you okay? If you need anything, I'm here." When we take the time to connect, especially in the social media world, we're reminding students we care about them and they are noticed for making a difference as a human being and not only for their grades. She hopes to do these professional developments in school districts all across the United States. So that's, I don't know if you remember, gave her leave in May to take this for a year off. She teaches up at Shepherd Hill. Then she gave me 2 updates on 2 students that graduated in 2019. Alicia Truman, I don't know if you probably know her, Alicia Truman. She was an outstanding soccer player at Shepherd Hill. She's now at Southern Virginia University, majoring in education. She played varsity at Shepherd Hill for 4 years, and she took the initiative over the summer to be trained by Ashley and another teacher, Amanda Brotherton, so that she would be ready for her freshman year debut as a goalie. She played her first full game as goalie on September 14th, and this is the exciting part. During the last 10 seconds of the game, there was a breakaway, and she came out of the net, cut the angle. I don't play soccer, I don't know what this means. And punched the ball out of bounds to keep the game at a tie, and they sent it into overtime. So they were very proud of her, and Ashley did send me a video of that. If you want me to forward it to you, I'll send the video. And then also, she wants to congratulate private first class United States Marine Avery Ceccarelli, who's also a Shepherd Hill graduate from this past June. She graduated on September 20th from Paris Island. As an educator, you have the opportunity to impact the lives of your students, and you also have the opportunity to have them impact yours. Avery made up her mind to just do it and said, "Gus," that's what Ashley goes by, "Gus, I want this, so I'm going to make it happen." It was an honor to be Avery's teacher and witness her transform from a girl trying to find her way into a woman who knows what she wants and what she stands for. One of the greatest honors I've had in my life was witnessing her graduate as United States Marine, and she sent me some pictures of her getting her graduation. So I thought she said she's going to update me on students throughout the year, graduates and what they're doing, because we never really hear after they leave what happens. And so I thought it was worthwhile to read that here. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to bring up I had the pleasure to attend the first honors dinner at Shepherd Hill. I know it's in the superintendent's report as well, but it was good to see the program, and I, again, congratulate the staff and especially the students and the parents. It was a great evening, and I was able to attend with Mrs. Cavallo and Mrs. O'Coin, but it was good.
Anyone else?
We can pass around the brochure if people want to see it.
Thank you, Kenny. And that will conclude the communications. Now, Superintendent's report, Mr. Lamar.
Madam Chair and School Committee, I have a couple of items to report on. The first one is that we continue to monitor the risk of EEE. There was 2 communications that went out today, one right around 3:27 p.m. Regarding the recent upgrade of our communities to a high risk level, which means that we need to continue to evaluate what we do for during dusk and dawn during those timeframes. Then subsequent to that, we did learn that somebody in Charlton did contract EEE. The information I have is that it was around a 70-year-old gentleman who contracted EEE, so we sent a subsequent communication out after consulting with Director of Health Services for Charlton and school personnel. We are going to, starting next Monday, September 30th, we're going to stop backing our end of activities time from 6 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. To address as dusk continues to move closer to those timeframes. I want to be clear, those are for school activities, things that we do in the school. I know when I've left the office on several occasions past 6 p.m. That people are still outside walking, adults. I'm not here to control the adults, but I just, for us for school-sponsored activities, we are going to follow the time frame that we are setting for the end of activities. I know that the athletic director and the music department and other individuals are working hard to accommodate the schedule, moving things inside, moving things around. I really appreciate their flexibility, and I appreciate the flexibility of parents too, because moving things back has certainly changed the timing of getting out of work, picking students up, dropping students off, et cetera. And I continue to support the Boosters Club, who usually sponsors night events at the concession stand, and I do continue to feel bad that they are, some of their fundraising is not coming to fruition this school year. We need to be cognizant of that, but it's all for the right reasons, for the safety of our students moving forward. We continue to pray for a hard frost and several nights of below freezing. Hopefully they'll be soon. But this is a serious situation, and we don't want to miss a beat when it comes to EEE. At the same time, we're continuing to monitor what happens during the school day. Right now, that's not as high risk during the school day, but we are going to continue to monitor and err on the side of caution. If it's dusk-like conditions, if there's standing water out in our schools, we're going to monitor that. If adults happen to see mosquitoes during the school day, we're going to bring recess in and change what we do. We're trying to keep students out of the woods, and we're going to continue to monitor the situation during the school day. So that's regarding EEE at the current time frame. This past Thursday is, I was going to say Mr. Lafayette, but it's
Either way, I'll answer any.
okay. All right.
Leferrier.
Leferrier, Mr. Leferrier, yes. Very French, Mr. Leferrier,
Thank you.
yes, yes. I attended the first honors dinner. It was my first time attending that dinner. It was what a wonderful event. I was amazed at how the cafeteria gets converted to a kind of an evening hall, and the food was spectacular. Matthew Greenberg should certainly get a lot of credit for his skill and aptitude towards preparing meals for as many people as he did, and it was great. The speakers were all great. The students were phenomenal. What a way to start the month of September in the school system and honor those that have received first honors. As I said, and I made up a word in here, and I know that some of you will criticize me for that, I'm sure, but I call them the acolytes. They're the academic athletes. They're the ones who really push the envelope when it comes to the spirit of academics, and they really do deserve recognition for their extra effort and time that they put into their learning. The next item I have is the Massachusetts Legislative Joint Committee on Education released a bill titled the Student Opportunity Act. This has been years in the making. This is going to impact the way that Chapter 70 and funding for schools is happening since 1993. I attached the bill and all the summary sheets, everything that you can have under the sun regarding this to this point. Yesterday, there was a release from the Senate of some technical updates on it and some other updates on it. I put that in the electronic file. I did not print it out and bring it. We continue to look at how this will impact the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District. Right now, and I put a call in to Senator Fatman as well, and spoke with his Chief of Staff, Keith. I didn't get Keith's last name, but we are going to schedule a time for Senator Fatman and myself to introduce ourselves and meet and talk about this. They are working on a impact scenario for our district and how that will impact our district. Preliminarily, I can tell you that it will, if it does go through the way it's written, it will impact our reimbursement rate for special education transportation out of district. And it will do some additional calculations for SEL support. That's social emotional learning support. So for example, school psychologists, school adjustment counselors, those calculations will be involved in the Chapter 70 formula too. Beyond that, I don't see a huge impact for our particular district. A lot of the money is focused on districts with high levels of low income students. So right now, we'll continue to monitor that, and as we know more, we'll get back to you and share what that is. They have a week to amend it, and they're looking to vote next week on something. So they have about 7 days to vote on it. It's pretty much on a fast track at this point in time. Today was a very exciting day for me. We started the day with learning walks. Administrative team, Lorinda Allen, set up a learning walk protocol for us. We had a number of administrators, six of us total. 8 of us total. Sorry, no, 6, 8, 10, 9.
7 by the end.
7 by the end.
And then Bill.
We had 7 administrators, and we walked through Shepherd Hill, and we all visited at least 4 classroom environments, some of them across the gamut from intensive learning centers to co-teaching classes to gen ed classes. And then we came back and we debriefed and talked about what we observed, and to me, it was one of the most important reasons why we're here, and it was really a great way to really kind of connect and build our philosophies and belief systems in what we observed and understood. It wasn't a judgment zone, so we weren't passing evaluative judgment on the staff, but it was really a good chance for us to see, what's going on in our buildings. It's something we're going to do on a regular basis. So I really appreciate Lorinda organizing that and setting that up, but it was a great opportunity for all of us.
What time did you do it?
We did it this morning from about 9 to about 11, and then we debriefed for about a half hour after that. It was great. The other thing I want to mention too is that this past week I had my first meeting with what was previously called the Superintendent's Advisory Council. It was a great meeting with students. I really enjoyed my time with them. We had lunch together and we really came up with a nice game plan. Anya, and I was going to say Grobleski, but it's not Grobleski. Anya Grandalski. Is the president of that group. We worked on the agenda together. I met wonderful students at Shepherd Hill. I did respectfully ask them if we could change the title of the group because I really am not comfortable with the acronym of that particular group. It's good for a 7th grade laugh, but it's just really not my kind of lingo. So they changed it to, they voted on it, they had a couple suggestions. They changed it to DCLC, which is a Dudley-Charlton Leadership Council. So we're going to announce that. There was an announcement, I think, on today, looking for freshmen, to add freshmen to the group. Yep. But we had a great first meeting, and we're meeting again October 8th. I'm really looking forward to working with this very strong, passionate group of Shepherd Hill students. It should be about 16 of us total, which I thought was great. And then the last thing is that last night I did visit the Charlton Board of Selectmen, and I was able to introduce myself to the Board of Selectmen. Kenny happened to be there to support myself as the superintendent in the school district, which I thought was great. Anya was there, and she was voted in as the a student representative for the select board, which I complimented them on. I thought that was phenomenal that they do that. I did make a bold statement and talk about Mass School Building Authority, and I talked about how they visited, and I talked about how, really from my perspective right now and after the visit and talking about it, that at best it looks like it would be a renovation project. It wouldn't be a knock down, construct project. It would be a renovation to address some of the items that we'll talk about in that agenda item when we get to it. But I really appreciate their time, and it was a very nice welcome by the Board of Selectmen from Charlton.
Now, Dudley has a student rep too.
Yes.
On their board.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I plan to be there as well at some point in time to introduce myself. So that concludes the superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you. That brings us to our student rep report. Kaylee.
Thank you. So I promise, guys, this is going to be the longest one I have all year, but it's not too bad. Just a few things to report on. Just a reminder, this Saturday is Shepherd Hill's homecoming day. The Unified Sport, their basketball game is officially at 10:30 a.m. in the gym. It's supposed to be crowded, so if you plan on going, get there early so you can get a seat. It's going to be a great time. And the football game starts at 1 o'clock. And during this time, be sure to stop by the John Pear Student Support Fund booth. They're going to be selling Be Better gear and shirts if you want to go ahead and order them. They're maroon and gold to kind of represent Shepherd Hill and the district as a whole. And another super fun announcement, I'm so happy about this one. The Shepherd Hill volleyball program has raised $5,930 that has been donated to the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance after selling t-shirts in support of John Lindstrom's fight. I know if any of you guys are following her, if you follow her on her social media, she is totally kicking butt right now, and I just thought it was so awesome that the program could really come together and go beyond just her, but representing the whole entire fight while also being able to support her and be by her side. And in sports, girls cross country, they started their season off with a 3-0 record. They just beat Shrewsbury yesterday, and 5 of the top 6 finishers were from Shepherd Hill. And student council this week, they're raising money for the victims of Hurricane Dorian. It's our Spirit Week right now, so during lunch they're selling cookies, and all that money is going down to the Bahamas and Puerto Rico. And they're also doing a kind of class competition, and so each grade, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, we each have a different item that we have to bring in. And so I think freshmen, it's medical tape. I can't remember the other two, and I know seniors were Band-Aids. And so whatever class brings in the most, you get $100 towards your class, but all those supplies, they get to go down and help the victims of Hurricane Dorian. And NHS, they have purchased new recycling bins, 2 for every classroom. One's going to be for paper, and the other one is going to be for bottles and cans. I just found this out from my friend. So previously, the recycling bins, anything has been kind of been thrown into them, and it hasn't been monitored very well. So when the janitors are coming by, they're dumping them to the recycling, but all that ends up going to the trash. So even though we think we're recycling these products, you can't go through them. You can't trust that they're being recycled properly, so they have to go into the trash. But with this new technique, they're hoping that they can kind of sort things a little bit, and then hopefully take the bottles and cans to the can drive over there, get some money, and then donate that to further, I'm trying to think of the word, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. Causes, that's the word, sorry. And then 3 Shepherd Hill students have been recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. 3 seniors, Hannah Guerin, Madison Hill, and Ryan Moore, they placed among the top 50,000 scorers of more than 1.5 million students. So they are being recognized for that in their hard work. And now, just while I'm up here, I wanted to kind of take the time as a student of Shepherd Hill to reflect on just one of my classes that I'm really enjoying right now and give a little bit of praise. It's Mr. D'Amelio, if you guys know, Frank D'Amelio, sorry. He is a business teacher up at Shepherd Hill. I'm in his effective presentations class right now. And in the past month of school, I've learned more, not just about presentations, but about life itself and how to be an effective person in this world than I have learned throughout my whole entire school career. So I'm so grateful and thankful for him during this time. And we actually get to do a presentation every week. And so this subject is about anything about our choice. So kids got really passionate. We had one student, he went over the effect of driving when you're tired in the morning and why school should be pushed later. Not that it was like the perfect solution to everything, but he just set his mind to it and said, hypothetically, here's what we can do. And I just wanted to bring up one of the presentations. It was by Hannah Flahan. She's the student council president. She actually did a study last year, and she wanted to improve menstrual products that were being provided to the girls in the girls' bathroom, not just the nurse's office. And she actually found out that in our bathrooms at Shepherd Hill, the dispensers for the menstrual products, they're rusted. And so all those products in there even though they're in wrappers, they're kind of not being very sanitized, I guess you could say. Yeah, it's not sanitary. But then after further investigation, they found that the tampons there have expired in 2007. and the average shelf life of a tampon is 5 years, and it's now 2018. So she did that work for, yes. It is 2019. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking last year. My bad. But yeah, so she presented that to our class, and that was definitely opened all of our eyes to how can we improve this school? What's going wrong in this school? What's going great in this school? And what can we do to improve it? So beyond that, not that it's anyone's fault that there's old
Kaylee,
products
were
in
they
there.
being used then? They weren't being used?
No, and they weren't. And most of the time,
That's
it's
why.
because some of the machines too, they don't seem the most pleasing to use some of the time. But, girls go into the nurse's office, but she actually started a movement and a little bit of petition just to, get new machines that work, and she's had all that figured out. So within a week, new menstrual products are being provided to all the girls in there. So it's not a diss at anyone or anything. It's just the extent of how far she went to get something done that she set her mind to. So that was a class that I loved. I just wanted to share that with you guys. So yeah, that's all I have for today. I'm sorry. I know that was a little on the lengthy side.
Don't ever be sorry. This is good.
Thank you.
Don't ever be sorry.
Thank you. Do I have any questions today? No. Okay. And that wasn't meant to scare anyone and be like, oh my gosh, this is so it's just something that she set her mind to, and
did
it
a
was
great
fixed right
job.
away.
Funny you should
That
mention
is,
that.
yeah.
When we do the school committee report, in one of the resolutions, it's about that.
Yeah.
The last resolution, they were
Right.
talking about menstrual things in the bathrooms. So you're right in
And,
line with that.
they should have new ones,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be
Yes.
rusty
Yeah.
and
They are.
old, so
Yeah.
no one wants to use them.
Yes. So definitely, it's just something to think about and something she put out there. But like I said, there were other kids who set their mind to something else in the school. Another girl, she founded the recycling bins that they wanted to do, and that's the reason why they're changing. So great class. Props to Mr. D'Amelio for getting everyone excited about making change and getting a good grade for it too.
And kudos to the recycling, the National Honor Society, and the girl who started that, because I reached out also to Mr. Stefan, and I said, please make sure they're in the district office too, because
Yeah.
that's been a pet peeve, and he said, we already ordered one for you.
That's awesome.
We are ahead of you. So I said, thank you.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Good
just
job.
want to say, for those that are keeping track, I am wearing a purple tie tonight. It is not for Bourne, I just want to be clear about that, because Bourne's colors were purple. It was because of at the high school today, the staff were wearing all purple today as part of their activities, so. Yeah, and some of the teachers' outfits were incredible today. Yeah.
So
I'm glad you
cool.
clarified.
I just want, for those keeping track, I know, for those Twitter people out there and all that kind of stuff,
We love your support. Thank you.
supporting Shepherd Hill today.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anything else to add to Kaylee's report? Very good, Kaylee, thank you. That brings us to new business, superintendent's entry plan. Mr. Lamont?
Madam Chair and School Committee, I provided you with the documents that were created for what I talked about was a studied introduction to the district as part of being a new superintendent and being an outside person. It's really important for me to get feedback from people within the district and outside of the district. So it was sent out to all staff about a week and a half ago. It was sent out to all parents on Monday of this week, and it's really soliciting a lot of information. So far, I'm up to 52 responses, and people are being very thorough in their responses, which is great, and I hope to have more responses. The next step for me is to send it out to the communities, too, for some feedback, and see if we could distribute it in some way through the towns. I did settle on a small survey right now. The survey, which it's called a studied introduction. Feedback is extremely important to help establish a pathway for forward. And right now, this is just, as we talked about, as I presented at the school committee meeting in, I think, August, some of the things that we're looking at is capital improvements and operations, governance and policy, community relations, and teaching and learning. And people are really giving me good feedback on this. This is, again, something I'm working on with the interim assistant superintendent to craft, and I hope to get enough information, which I think I'm already getting, to provide and write up a copy of what the plan would look like moving forward and what we find. You cannot move past the questions on the survey unless you help prioritize what the area of focus is, and then if you share what the accommodations are of the district as well. I think oftentimes people tend to shoot for the negative or concerns, so You are required to answer that question, you know, what's going well for the district first, and then you can get into all of the concerns that are out there too, so. I wasn't gonna read this verbatim, but I was gonna see if there were any questions from the school committee on this document and the stuff that we're soliciting for information to try to compile, again, as I talk about it, a studied introduction, but a pathway forward for the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District.
I don't have a question per se, but I would say it's great to get the feedback and put it out there, and so I think it's very well done.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Lamache. Oh, sorry, Jamie.
The positive feedback that you receive, are you gonna provide that information as well? And are you gonna, if it's specific to a certain school or a certain something, you're gonna make sure that they get it directly?
Yeah, the way this is set up is it's set up as almost anonymous. People
Okay.
do put enough information in there, so that you could kind of detect where they were coming from, what school or something like that, but it's not, I'm not tracking who's entering it, I'm not asking you what school you work in and all that. It's
Okay.
really big picture, it's really for the district. But if there is something specific for a school, especially in the concern area, I will certainly share that with the building principal. And then the accommodations, of course, if they are building specific, I'll share that as well.
Great,
But it's really like a 30,000-foot view
Sure.
at this perspective, so,
okay,
okay?
thanks.
Okay. All right, that brings us up to the Director of Finance and Operations report, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you. I have a couple of items for the committee this evening. First, donations. The district has received $580 as donations for CPAC to be used for the speaker and materials for a multi-week seminar series. We had talked about this at the last meeting, and actually I'd like to increase that amount by $80 with late-breaking news, so a total of $660. Shepherd Hill High School received a donation of $250 to help offset the teacher's welcome breakfast. And not included in the report, again, based on timing, was Heritage School received a $250 Staples gift card for the school's use. I recommend the committee accept these donations.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Saying none, all in favor?
Bless you.
Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you. In your packets was a draft of the FY '21 budget timeline. I think we'll talk about this a little bit more under the Budget and Finance Subcommittee, but we'll leave it there. Along those lines, for FY '20, the hiring map, bless you, was included in the packets, and an update on the FY '20 budget status as it relates to the payroll side of the house. At the August meeting, I had provided an update which showed that we're about $40,000 on the bad side of things. With the final hirings, that number's come down to about $20,000, which is something that we can certainly cover in circuit breaker. So even though some hires were a lot more expensive than were budgeted, we did have some unknown retirements and departures that helped to offset those increased costs. So, you know, all in all, I think it balanced out fairly well. And lastly, is the asbestos notification. This is an annual notification that comes to school committee, and then we'll get it out, published on our websites, and announced to the public going forward. A copy was included in the packet. Just as a notification for new members on school committee or people watching at home. 5 of our schools have no asbestos present. There should be no surprise that our 2 oldest, that Charlton Elementary and Shepherd Hill still have some. Shepherd Hill is primarily in the elbows in the plumbing, and at Charlton Elementary, there's still some floor tiles.
Any questions?
But it's all contained, Rich.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions?
Well, Madam Chair, and school committee, this is something that's obviously very important to the safety of our students, the AHERA notification as well as the AHERA reports. And I have to say, after working with Rich and reviewing this, the district is in really good shape. I've had previous experiences where a district has had to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars for an incident that comes forward during the school year. But I think that this area of the district has really been addressed well, and it's great to see 5 out of the 7 schools with no asbestos present in it. So my hat's off to the district for the work that's been done to eradicate asbestos and to contain it as well.
Any other questions for Rich?
I
Ma'am.
have a question about the hiring map.
Yep.
Is that okay to do that this time?
Sure.
So you have the differentials for the people with their salaries. Do you have the differentials on, as far as benefits go?
No, we don't track that as part of this. Once all of the enrollments have happened, then we'll take a look and see where we stand budget-wise vis-à-vis the original projection.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then,
Well, you're all set.
that concludes Rich's report, and that brings us up to appointment of district treasurer, and that's Mr. Lamache.
Madam Chair and School Committee, as you are aware, a longstanding treasurer, Mindy, I forget.
Erst Fournier? Erst Fournier?
First Fournier?
Erst Fournier.
Erst Fournier. Mindy Erst Fournier retired and moved and relocated for a position late at the end of the school year last year, and the district had recommended and hired June Hibbston Ward.
Hubbard Ward.
Hubbard Ward, I was close, sorry, Hubbard Ward. And she accepted the position and worked with us for a little over a month, almost 2 months, and had decided it was, in retirement, it was not the position that she wanted to continue with. So within a very short period of time, the position was reposted, and we did receive a couple of applicants for the position. There was one candidate that stood out with experience, education, background. I believe we did a thorough background check on this individual. There were concerns raised because of an incident that happened at the Algonquin Public Schools back in 2014. To my knowledge, through our extensive background check, there was no association or relationship with this individual for that, other than she happened to be the treasurer at that district at the time. She has had a long-standing positive relationship with Bay Path. She's been employed in Bay Path since 2001 as their treasurer, and continues to be successfully employed as their treasurer. She has had a long-standing experience with the town of Dudley. She was the treasurer from 1977 to 2002, with a very positive, long-standing role there as treasurer. And therefore, we are bringing her forward as the next and best candidate at this time for treasurer for the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District.
And I'll entertain a motion for approval of Carol Barron to be our treasurer.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
What would be the salary of that? Could you just put that for public record? What's it, 17?
17 and some change.
Okay.
Under 18.
Which is the same as before.
Yeah. It'll obviously be prorated based on start date.
Right.
And if I may, this appointment should become effective with June Hubbard Ward's resignation, which is 9/30.
Okay, so that will be in the motion.
She hasn't resigned officially yet?
No, she's resigned as of 9/30, as of September 30th.
So is she been coming in, June?
No, she's been away for a couple of weeks.
Okay. I thought she had already left. She didn't technically.
No,
she's
she
still
was
on-
probably taking her vacation.
Well, she didn't have vacation.
It's not vacation. She had invested a number of extra days trying to
Oh,
get
so she
caught up.
traded off and did
yeah.
5 days in 1 week?
Yeah, exactly.
She had 5 weeks?
Yep.
Okay. I
Which
thought she was
the
gone.
district was
Oh.
aware of this
Okay.
when she was hired, that she
Yeah.
needed that time available.
I didn't realize she was still on the books till now. I thought she had 7.
Yeah, no, the resignation's effective as of September 30th.
Okay, so this would
So
start
this will
Monday.
take effect October 1st, if she's on the
Next
books
week.
until the 30th.
So effective
Okay.
October 1st, that's what we're saying in the motion. I'll add that to the motion. Effective October 1st, at a salary of 17,000 and change. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've been doing a little bit of research on salary, not that that's an issue at this point in time, but you know, for example, in Algonquin, their treasurer is paid $30,000 for the same role. Just so that the district is aware of it.
I know, I had a feeling that for the work that's put in, that 17 was low.
but
We'll have to
that's for another
discuss
day
that.
at some point in time, but I just wanted to, I was gonna do a little research, more research on the role that emerged through my conversations on the background check.
What's the salary day path, do you know?
I don't.
Any other discussion, Jamie?
I would like to say that I appreciate the extra effort that you went through to verify where we were at, because I was not coming in here to vote for this today because I was not comfortable with what we were faced with not knowing. And so I did appreciate all of the extra information that you were able to provide to us.
I agree with Mrs. Terry. It was good to have that all laid out, so thank you.
You're welcome. Again, my role, that's my role. If there's a concern raised about anything that we're bringing forward, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to dig in a little deeper and find out, because, I mean, I'm not perfect. I could be wrong, so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that as well. And the communication was very important to me, to be able to, I wouldn't have known that before the meeting, so I appreciate the communication before that, so I could do the work that needed to be done to bring this forward this evening.
Sure. And we're just putting our name to it, so we want to, that's why I
Agreed.
feel comfortable, yeah.
Yep. I am too.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Budget and Finance Subcommittee report, and that will be Catherine.
We met on September 17th, and several things on our list we've discussed, and we've gotten handouts that you have from Mr. Matthew. First of all, the budget timeline, if you want to look at that, that's attached to Mr. Matthews' report on the second page. We kind of laid out what we'd like to do, our goals for each month leading up to the budget, the big-time budget. Right now, we're kind of at an in-between budget season, so to speak, so we really didn't go into much detail of the actual budget. It was more like planning a strategy for the year. So the first meeting in October would be local town officials. That's basically Mr. Lamash and Mr. Matthew would handle the October meeting, just to get a feel for the two different towns. And then in January, we would be having a local leaders breakfast for some new committee members. We used to have those with Mr. Destro. He'd invite people from the, like the representatives, the state senator, and local officials, and we'd all meet a couple of times a year. And we didn't do that last year. And we discussed it, and we think that we'd better to stick with the local officials at this time, that we'd get more bang for our buck, so to speak, speaking with our local Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee rather than the representatives from Boston. I think we need to hit home, because that's where the money gets the support from our town. So that will be in January. We hope to have a leaders breakfast, which we all will be invited to, plus whoever would return the invitations to the central office. We also went over the hiring map, which you have here, so you can look at that at your own leisure, just to give you an idea of who went where. The Capital Outlay Committee we talked about, and Mr. Lamash would like the makeup to be a couple of school committee members, which Kenny and I are already on, a custodian, an official from each town. I think you have one from Charlton, Mr.
Carlin, still working on Dudley.
Okay, so, and the one from Charlton, Mr.
Mr.
Meskis, and then one from Charlton, then Mr. Matthew, Mr. Lamash, would be 7 people. The treasurer we talked about, that's already been approved tonight. School choice, was still, are those figures set in stone yet, the school choice?
We actually have 2 more applicants coming in today, but I did send out that information to you yesterday, so they're not set.
But what's the number,
Installed.
what is the number now, which is,
It was 162.
162.
So we'll be at 164 after.
so we did well.
Yeah.
Do we have any slots open? Or-
We still have a few slots open, yes.
Okay, but that's still, that's very good compared to what we started with, 164.
We're getting up to the 180, absolutely.
Good. The other thing, basically, is just, we're gonna meet the third Tuesday of the month, except when there's holidays or vacations and so forth. So if anyone, the meetings are open to the public or to the rest of the committee. The dates are all on this sheet also, if you're interested in those. And also, I'd like to know if there are any items that you people would like to have us discuss at these meetings. You could either email the central office or let us know, because eventually we should have our priorities set of what we think we should be planning for the budget, even though truthfully, it's the administration that knows what's going on in every school. But if you have any items you'd like to be discussed, just email it to Paul, Mrs. O'Coin, Mrs. Reed, me, or the superintendent, or Mr. Matthew would discuss it. So our next meeting will be, October 15th, okay? That's basically it. It was a short meeting because, like I said, we're kind of in between budget seasons. I was just kind of getting done one before we start the new thing.
Any questions?
Thank you for the update.
Sure. Yeah.
Good, thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning report, Karen?
Thank you. So in your packets tonight, you have an update of what's been going on for the last couple of weeks at some of the different school schools, so I'm just going to go through this with you. At the elementary schools, some of the highlights are that students have started the benchmark assessments in reading and math with our STAR web-based assessment software. It's a regular schedule adopted by administrators to assess student progress throughout the year. Our Houghton Mifflin Into Reading pilot group has started weekly meetings to formulate lessons, identify questions, and generally help each other through the pilot process of using new materials. The plans for Community Reading Day are underway, so watch for your invitations. That's happening October 21st through the 25th, with the exception of Dudley Elementary School, which I believe is happening October 17th. At the middle schools, same with the STAR assessments and benchmarks. They're doing that as well. That happens in grades K through 8. I'm excited to report that a team of grade 5 teachers at both of our middle schools have been accepted into a DESE grant-funded program called Next Gen Time, which stands for a Toolkit for Instructional Materials Evaluation. It's a program for evaluating science curriculum materials. The program consists of a 3-day training, which was started today, and Erin Anderson from Charlton Middle School was representing us there. And a series of local meetings at WPI. We're all excited about this because we think it's a great opportunity for when we look at new science curriculum materials in the upcoming years. It's also a train the trainer, so Erin can come back and train the rest of our middle school teachers as well. At the high school, I have shared with you some of our brochures that are just kind of hot off the press for our new engineering innovation pathway and the biomedical innovations pathways. I've also shared some so the audience can see. So these are going to be shared with our parents and our students, most likely freshmen, because Mr. LaMarche also got feedback from the students that they're excited about these and they would like the opportunity to apply at the end of freshman year. So that we're excited about that. And then these awesome lab coats. Maybe Mr. Earl can zoom in on that. These have been pictures that were sent to me from Ms. Karen LeBeau and Mr. Tom Kordemosh. And they teach in the biomedical science program through Project Lead the Way. And even more exciting is this logo was designed by our own student, Melina Tigas. It says Shepherd Hill Biomedical Science with a little DNA in maroon and gold, and they're super excited about that. So we have the kids who are in their 3rd class get to take the coats home, and they're embroidered with their name on them. So that's awesome. They look very professional. In the administration team, we have some opportunities that we're also excited about and participating in 2 DESE programs. The Massachusetts Tiered Systems of Support Leadership Institute, which is going to start tomorrow and Friday, and Mr. LaMarche, myself, Lorinda Allen, Chris Starshevsky, and Peter Olson will be representing us there. And we're also accepted into the program evaluation team, which basically includes and involves a set of pilot evaluation tools to evaluate a program in our school or district. Providing feedback on the tool's usefulness and in which we attend 3 convenings and monthly technical support calls with DESE, basically convening all this data to help us see if this was useful or not. So we are going to do 2 programs. The first one is co-teaching, and the team will be made of Lorinda Allen, Judy Powell, who is our special education coordinator at the high school, and Cindy Markley, who's a grade 8 a math teacher here at Charlton Middle School, and she's co-teaching this year. And then for the reading program, it'll be myself, Principal Pastore, and Jill DeHannon, who's a reading specialist at Dudley Elementary School.
Thank you. Any questions for Karen? Okay, thank you, Karen. Update co-teaching initiative, Lorinda and Karen.
So thank you for letting us come and briefly share tonight on where we are with co-teaching. So we've entitled this 2 Teachers, 1 Class. And again, it's just a quick little snapshot of where we are. We've certainly made some great progress, but then you'll also see where we are heading. So co-teaching has lots of different definitions, different impressions, but the definition that's most highly regarded is that it's 2 teachers working together with groups of students, sharing the planning, organization, delivery, and assessment of instruction, as well as the physical space. So the key part of it is that planning, organization, delivery, and assessment. So they're both sharing equally in the load of teaching. It's not a teacher and a helper teacher. They're both carrying equal weight. So a classroom is set up with 1 general education teacher, who is typically considered the content master, and then a special education teacher, which is considered the strategies master. And Karen's going to talk a little bit about the general education.
The general education teacher has the content area knowledge. They are helpful and provide most feedback for the scope and sequence of the curriculum, the pacing of the curriculum. They know the state standards and how the curriculum fits into that, the knowledge of the state testing, and maybe perhaps how many questions of what standard and what to focus on more intently, and knowledge of additional resources for the content area. So perhaps great websites for science or social studies, or doing some extra support in reading or so forth.
And if you remember, this was one of the key reasons that we moved to the co-teaching model last year, was that our special education teachers were doing a fantastic job with the students in a small group, but they weren't trained and certified in that content area. So they didn't have the specialized subject knowledge. They had strategy knowledge, but not the subject knowledge. So we've paired them with, again, the special education teacher who has the strategy knowledge. And they are typically trained with specially designed instruction strategies. They often know behavior modification techniques, or practice them more frequently than a general education classroom teacher may. They're able to identify specific needs in students, if it's a learning disability, if it's a particular area of weakness. They have knowledge of the IEP and special education law, usually to a greater depth than a general content area teacher. And then again, helping with that monitoring and documenting of student progress and knowledge of accommodations for state testing. But one of the things that we've had to emphasize to our teachers is that because you may specialize in either the strategies or you may specialize in the content, that's not where we want you to stay. So if Karen and I were in the classroom together, say Karen came from the special ed world, from the science world, and I came from the special education world, we would want to blend.
Just say we did.
And Karen would want to be teaching me the science standards, teaching me the way to teach science, as much as I'm wanting to give her my strategy. So it's not you do this piece and I do this piece. It's truly a blending. And the other thing I really want to comment on, and I thank you all for your support with this initiative, is that, and I even have to catch myself, we want to move away from calling it an initiative to calling it a best practice. Because this is something that we're hoping is going to just last a really long time in our district, because it's the best for teachers.
Yeah, and if I could just also add in here too, is that the hope is that when it does stay and these teachers really form this cohesive team, and it goes on for years and years, that the special education, they're going to know the content too, and think of that as well, like the best of both worlds, where they're now comfortable knowing, oh yeah, we have joined the cell again, and I remember doing this, and so forth.
Best of both worlds. So what have we done so far? Last year, just as a reminder, we had Kathy Picaro come in, and she trained our high school group. We chose her because she was a former high school teacher herself. So she had been in that model with that age group where it's a little bit of a different focus than, say, in an elementary classroom. And then for our teachers in the elementary and middle school cohort, we had Abigail Hanscom come in. And each one of those ladies did 2 or 3 days with our staff as an initial get off the ground training. Abby also came in and trained our administrators so that our administrators would understand the difference and what we were looking for. So this is where we currently are in terms of grade content and our co-teaching teams. I know it's a little small, so we'll be happy to send this presentation to you after. But Mason Road has one co-teaching team right now in grade 1, and they are just targeting ELA and math. Charlton Elementary has 2 co-teaching teams in first grade, and they are in the classroom all day together. Heritage Dudley-L is doing the same model with grades 2, 3, and 4. They each have one co-teaching team for ELA and math. And then Heritage School is doing the full day model in grades 3 and 4. Dudley Middle has implemented it in ELA and math in grades 6, 7, and 8, one teacher at each grade. And Charlotte Middle has done one teacher at each grade for ELA and math in the whole school. And then Shepherd Hill, it's about 2 teachers per topic area. We focused with math, so you see algebra and geometry, and then English 9 and 10, and biology 9 and 10. So next year the hope is to expand it either in a grade or expand it by subject to social studies and science, depending where we're at in each school. One of the big things that both of our presenters talked about was parity signals in the classroom. And so we've talked to teachers about this, and they've really embraced it. And how do you move students from thinking, and parents too, from that's the teacher and I'm the helper teacher. So talking about our classroom, these are the things we do. So you'll notice some of our teachers have already really embraced this. They have their desks side by side in one classroom. You walk in, they have both names on the sign. This one I find particularly interesting because Mrs. Wade Betts and Miss McElroy, if you walked in, a lot of times we tend to put the content teacher's name first and then the special education's teacher's name underneath. In this particular case, they reversed it because they're equal roles and nobody knows which teacher is which teacher. And that's what our ultimate goal is when we go into the classroom, we don't know. They're just helping all students.
Lorinda, I have a question.
Sure.
In the high school,
Mhm.
now say science and you have the inclusion, you have the special education teacher coming in too. Well, how does that differ from being co-teachers? Because aren't they already in the room in the high school? Like
No.
a science, inclusion?
No, so what we had been doing, we had a couple models going on at the high school. So our special education teachers were primarily small group. So our special ed students were in a small group of 5, 6, 7 students and the special education teacher. They weren't with a general education
Did
content
they
teacher.
go in the classroom though?
No.
Oh, they didn't? I
They
thought they were
didn't.
in the classroom.
Some of them. The model that you may be thinking inclusion, where they went in the classroom, they
thought
were
that-
supported with an instructional assistant. And so we still have some supported classrooms where there's an instructional assistant supporting, but for our students that used to be pulled out, they're now included, they're part of the class, and you're gonna get to hear some student voices in a few minutes about what that has meant
I was
to
under
them.
the impression the special education teacher went into the classroom, like in
No.
a science
This is why
class.
Yep, this is all new.
That's
Yeah.
for inclusion.
So there are 6 different models of co-teaching that we've shared with our teachers, and we're beginning to see some of this. They're really having to rethink how they plan, how they organize their lessons. So if you think of these green half circles as the teachers, to represent the teachers, the purple represent all the tops of little student heads. So the first one is team teaching, and they're both at the front of the room. They're both delivering the instruction together. These are some of our first grade teachers at Charlton Elementary School. And again, you'll see they're doing the side-by-side teachers. And in our initial observations, we're finding that at this point in time, initially getting this off the ground, this is the model a lot of our teachers are doing. They're kind of side-by-side up there together. One shares, the other one jumps in, the other one responds, and they kind of play off of each other. Another model that we see is one teach, one assist. So if I was at the top of the classroom giving my instruction, Karen will be walking around the room, helping the students, retargeting them, focusing them, perhaps checking homework, perhaps helping them with an assignment. And then the next day, we might flip, and she might be at the front of the room, and I might be doing that job. And here's a task where one is teaching, one is assisting. This is our second grade class at Dudley Elementary School. We have parallel teaching, which we're building up to. This takes a little bit of getting used to because you have two teachers in the same classroom teaching the same thing, but it might be at a different pace. It might be with different materials. One might be a little bit, might need manipulatives and the other group may not. Or it might be two completely separate lessons. Karen might teach about cell structure and I might be teaching about, I don't know, what else goes with cells? Meiosis, right? There we go. And then the next day we would flip-flop, or even later that afternoon we would flip-flop. And she would teach the second group that, and I would teach. Because you've got a smaller group, so even though they're getting the same content, the fact that you have a smaller group of students really lets you have that conversation and know who's understanding and who's dialoguing with you. We have one teach and one observe. This is not used a lot, and when we say observe, it's a thoughtful observation. They're either taking specific data on a student, they're looking to see, give the teacher feedback. For example, how many times do I ask a higher order thinking question? When I'm in my own classroom, I may think I do that a lot more than I really do. Karen comes in, she can observe, hey, you only asked 2 higher order questions, everything else was just rote. So it just gives feedback to each other. And then station teaching. And this is something you'll see often at the elementary school level. And you have students moving from station to practice specific skills. A lot of times at the elementary school, we have parents that have come in and help support in this way, or a Title I teacher, or a reading specialist. And so now we have 2 teachers that can do this on a daily basis and really target those individualized skills and or provide for challenge. And here's a teacher just doing that right now. That's one of our first grade teachers at Charlton Elementary.
So the first group that you're going to see is from the high school. We interviewed some students at the environmental science class and biology class. So we asked them if they minded just giving us some feedback on how it's going. They were like, sure. And so there's some examples here.
So we have 2 students with us from environmental science. They are, can you introduce yourselves?
I'm Hunter.
I'm Lexi.
And they are part of our co-teaching classroom for science. So can you guys just give me a little bit about what you think of having 2 teachers in your classroom?
I think it helps
Yeah.
helps me and other students.
It helps like when one teacher is with one student and you can just ask the other teacher.
So it's worked out good. What kind of things do you do in there that might be different that you couldn't do when you just had one teacher in the classroom?
Work.
Yeah, like the extra help.
So you've enjoyed it?
Yes.
Thanks. No scripted answers, right?
Yeah.
This student was very articulate with his sharing.
Mitch, I'm Mrs. Aris. Thanks for talking with us. So we just wanted to ask you if there's anything that's different about having 2 teachers and anything that you might particularly like about having 2 teachers in your biology class.
Yes. Well, it's very structured, having 2 teachers. I feel like having 2 of them makes it a lot better for the environment, because, you know, they can, like, if someone's picking on you or if someone's giving you trouble, there's more spot out that you have with
Okay.
the teachers.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And so how are you liking it so far? We're about 3 weeks in.
I like it a lot. I feel like, cause, well, I'm in a lot of classes with Mike over,
Okay.
and they help a lot. It's a good structure.
Excellent.
And this was another student, and she was so anxious to share, but she just needed that little bit of support. So she convinced her teacher, and she said, I'll share if you share. And her teacher was like, oh my goodness, and Brianna was able to convince her to come out. So this is Mrs. Brotherton and Brianna. And Brianna is a student at Shepherd Hill, and she is in a co-taught class for biology with Mrs. Brotherton. So, Mrs. Brotherton, what have you enjoyed about co-teaching so far this year?
It's really nice because I get to know the students a little bit better that are in the co-taught classes and the inclusion classes and other levels, so it's been nice to get to know them. Plus, I have most of them twice a day in academic support when they need that support, which is awesome because we've gotten to know each other a little bit better.
And Brianna, what do you like about having two teachers in classroom?
It makes it easier.
It makes it easier. How does it make it easier for you?
More than one teacher to ask for help.
I love it. Thanks,
Perfect.
Brianna.
Thanks, Brianna.
It's awesome.
These are from environmental science. And so Mike, thank you for taking time today to talk to us. Can you tell us anything different about having two teachers in your classroom?
It's actually easier because when the teacher's working with a student, you can ask the other teacher for help and then get your answer.
Cool. So you kind of thumbs up?
Yeah.
And you said you have a lot of classes that you're in that are co-taught, so what classes
I
are you
have
taking now?
bio for co-taught, English, and math, and history.
Has it changed how you've been able to do anything in those classes, projects or lessons at all?
No, not really.
No.
Still figuring it out.
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Anthony, thanks for talking with us today. So can you tell us what's different about having two teachers in your classroom?
Well, it adds more like just like people like to like you can count on to like if you need help. And also like there's like built up conversation because sometimes you come and say hello, talk about your day, and it's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay, awesome.
So that's a high schooler's perspective. And the teachers weren't as eager to get on camera, but they would share some written thoughts with us. So some of the thoughts that they had is just, been really eye-opening for them, and they've had to change everything to plural. And one of the sayings that they often say in the elementary classrooms is ask three before me. Before you come and help me, if I'm working with a small group, ask three other people. And they've said, oh, we had to say ask three before us. Their newsletters they've updated, their emails, their basic day-to-day language, their blogs, it's all had to become plural, and so they're learning and working through that. They said it was hard to get parents to email both teachers at the start because we've talked about teachers want to hear everything from every parent, and teachers are knowing what's going out. They want to both know what's coming in. A lot of leery parents about the idea of co-teaching at first, and so there were many misconceptions about what a co-taught classroom was, so the teachers would communicate by email. We also created a little flyer from the district that went home with all our students that were in a co-taught classroom that kind of gave them a little bit of background on that as well. So we asked them, what have they seen different in 3 weeks' time? They've seen more efficiency with the smaller things in class. The routines are developing quicker. They're differentiating for students at more levels. They're able to start rotations to target multiple skills earlier. I mean, think about that alone, how quickly that's going to help close gaps for students. They're holding each other accountable, keeping each other on schedule. Academically, they're able to start working on the curriculum sooner. They work off each other's strengths and have that teacher toolbox growing, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier with learning skills from each other. They said meet the teacher night was so much easier with 2 people rather than 1. And they love the fact that there was always someone there to back them up.
And so they wanted to share also how they've seen it impact the students. They're saying that children are getting a very tailored learning experience based on their needs, which is, you can't say more than that, that's the whole goal. They say they love having multiple teachers, which you will hear again and more than once. They're better able to reach the students' social and emotional needs with 2 of us. Which I think was telling that you heard that high school students say right off the bat, there's more people to talk to and check in on me and say, hey, how you doing? More opportunities for the students to make connections with us.
And so these are a couple of 3rd grade teachers that we sort of bribed so that we could get a couple more teachers on camera. And these are 3rd grade teachers from Heritage School, Mrs. Montville and Mrs. Graham.
So the answer's not truthful then?
Well,
I was gonna say, I had no part in the bribe. What are some feelings you've been experiencing with co-teaching?
We've enjoyed the shared responsibility and the balance that co-teaching has, and the collaboration that we get to do on a daily basis. And kind of moment by moment, you really kind of go with whatever the students need in that moment and how they're kind of taking in your lesson and the next steps that you have to go to in order to make them understand what they're learning.
How do you feel it is impacting the students?
We feel like it's going to make a big difference. The co-teaching model really allows for flexibility, and whatever the students' needs are, it truly is driving our instruction right now. And we learned quickly on that the students need smaller groups, and there's 2 of us to do that right now.
Yeah, and I feel like those students who need the most needs, or have the most needs, are able to get that one-on-one attention that a lot of them do need, but also our students who are higher and they actually get time one-on-one with the teacher. Where in a classroom where there's only one adult, typically all that attention goes to the students who are the neediest, where in our classroom we're able to kind of group them differently and have one group be with a teacher and then another have an independent group and then another one actually have another teacher. So it's really nice.
What do you think are the next steps you want to take to expand your co-teaching skills, and how can the district help you?
We would love to see any classrooms or districts that have been doing co-teaching and have had success with co-teaching. That would be huge if we could go and do some observations in other districts.
And to really see a classroom that has had this co-teaching model done for several years and are really into the groove. And I feel like Danielle and I are really at that point where we understand what's going on. We just want to implement it the best way that we can. And I think seeing an experienced classroom would help.
And then these are some of their students that they were kind enough to record and send us. So these are voices of 3rd graders you're going to hear and talking about their experience.
All right, Allison, why do you like having 2 teachers?
Because they are so much fun and half of the brain. And they like to eat chocolate.
Okay. And what's been your favorite part so far with having 2 teachers?
Doing all the projects.
What about the projects? What do you get to do?
Like color them, draw them out, research them.
Okay. So who's your favorite teacher? Mrs. Graham or Miss Motville?
Both. I can't decide.
Very diplomatic.
All right, Panasi, are you ready? Okay. So why do you like having 2 teachers?
I like having 2 teachers because they can have better classes. It's 2 groups of half the class.
Why is 2 groups better?
Because if somebody is not doing what they're supposed to do, we can make the class do that too.
Oh. Do you like having 2 teachers?
Yes.
Would you rather have 1 or 2?
Rather have 2.
Okay. What's been your favorite part this year?
My favorite part has been the math.
Okay. Cool. So Brady, why do you like having 2 teachers?
Because if you're in one big group, you get distracted, but if you're in a little group, you don't.
Why don't you get distracted in a small group?
Because there's not much people.
Yeah. So do you like being in a small group or a big group better?
Small.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
So even 3rd graders learning about themselves and how they learn best and being able to articulate that. And then our final voice.
All right, Ella, why do you like having 2 teachers?
Because if one gets sick, there's always another one. And because if there's a bunch of students doing one project and there's a bunch of students doing another, we can always have two teachers for that too.
How do you like it so far, having two?
It's really cool.
Yeah. What's your favorite part? What's been your favorite part?
That I get to have two classrooms and two teachers.
Cool.
And we really tried to be objective. We had other voices hoping that somebody might say, oh, I'm not excited about it yet, I don't see any difference. And we didn't find any. I mean, there may be one out there, but, I mean, we really kind of dug and we chose some students that we thought may have a different reaction. And this is pretty telling of how they were. So our next steps as far as what we need to do for district and where we're thinking we need to go. We have some additional training and planning time. We're calling this teachers who are doing this now cohort A. They were our first group that was trained. We're gonna do some more training on our PD days this year with them. Our October day is going to be a check-in, let them have some more planning to kind of have the morning session to talk about any bugs, any bumps in the road that they've hit, how can we support them through some of those things. We're gonna be collecting data for program evaluation using the DESI and data group management tools that Mrs. Aries was mentioning that DESI is offering us for that program we're participating in. And then during budget season, we're hoping to be able to plan for expansion. So you'll be hearing some ideas about that. When we come back, you can be thinking about that. And then hopefully training cohort B for next year so that next fall we can continue to expand the program. So just a quote to leave you with, co-teaching does not exist solely to bring two teachers together, but it exists to serve students. And we're really finding that that's been true. So thank you for supporting us in this endeavor, and we would just ask that you would continue to support us. If you have questions, feel free to ask us. If you'd like to come visit a co-teaching classroom, let Mrs. Aris or I know. We're happy to go with you. Let the principals know. They'll welcome you in, but it's really going well.
That was very good. Go ahead, Jen.
I knew the students that you had in there from third grade, and I do think that you did pick students that would give you honest answers, for sure. And what they said is very true to those students. So I know them well enough to know that is truth for them. And I think that the principals that have had them would say that same thing, knowing them. So that touched me a lot. And I also wanted to say, I think this presentation has been extremely helpful to me to understand this better. And I think you should have a night for parents to come and hear this exact presentation, because I get asked by some of the parents of those students you had as early as last Saturday at soccer about this program, or this, we're not gonna call it an initiative, but whatever we're gonna call it right now.
Best practice in teaching.
Yes, I hadn't remembered that yet, sorry.
That's okay, I still have to keep reminding myself.
But I think that this very clearly defines it, and I did take some videos while you were presenting it, so hopefully I can get it to those parents that have asked me already. But I think a broken up video from me here is harder than if you actually had a night where they could come and learn about it.
Thank you for that feedback.
And the kids really learn a lot more, because believe it or not, 20 years ago, I taught Title I. We were doing co-teaching. We had the pull-out model and then the in-class model, and I'd go in for a math class, and there would be two teachers. And we did exactly what you've presented. So it's back again, and the kids loved it. They did.
And I think
and they learned more. They did learn more
and
with two
that's
teachers.
going to be interesting to check as part of our data. What was the trajectory with pacing for what teachers have been able to get through, and to really have students own the content. So we're still looking a little bit on, okay, what tools do we use exactly? Like, teacher feedback's great, student feedback's great, but what do we have for hard data, for science, you know, that we can use to measure it? And I think some of that will be really telling.
I'm sorry to go back in, but don't shortchange the things that they said specifically, because those students, some of those students are incredibly intelligent already, and they really absorb the information already, but the social emotional growth that they're able to absorb is going to be very hard to measure.
Exactly.
But I think that really will hit home for some of those kids.
I have some couple of questions. First of all, this presentation, again, I echo Mrs. Terry. I feel like I echo her a lot.
Guess we're friends.
This was very helpful for me, and I know I'm the newest member of the committee, so I know this has been a project worked on for quite a while. So thank you for providing this. Couple of things, the last student did talk about, I just had a question on what is the teacher's plans, like if one teacher is out sick? I assume they revert back to, they have a plan to do it just alone for the day?
So it's so funny you asked that question, because it literally has just come up today. It came up in a conversation at our learning walks from a secondary teacher, and then it came up in an email after I hadn't even got a chance to share that with Superintendent Lamarchette, that came up from an elementary teacher, and what do we do? And so we're still gonna work that out and calibrate that among administration. We were thinking initially for the older students, in the past, when we did a pull-out model, if that special educator was absent for a short period, for a day, for 2 days, we typically did not get a substitute for them because it was a specialized program. And so we kind of had thought that same initial reaction that, well, if it's a day, you know, a high school teacher can get through the day with those students, and the next day, the teacher will come back and we'll jump in. But then we were talking at the elementary level, that's very different when you have 24 little ones, you know, 6 and 7-year-olds who are just starting school, and, you know, a third of that classroom has significant needs. That's very different. So, excuse me, there was talk to still have a substitute come in that day. The map of what the day might look like may be a little bit different, but we're still gonna be having conversations to calibrate that with our administrative team.
Just the sub thing just brings in a whole nother level
Absolutely.
of importance, because they can't just, like the student, I thought, hit the nail on the head. Oh, and they're out sick, I got another teacher, but it's more than that. It's more than that. Thank you. And then, again, I think this is a great program, and I keep wanting to use the word initiative, but I know we're trying to get away from that. What's the impact, just from my own knowledge and the people watching at home, the budgetary, how it's going to affect us as far as, because the class sizes are the same, correct?
So last year, what we talked about, and perhaps Mr. Matthew can speak more eloquently in terms of numbers, but what we talked about, generally speaking, was a trade-in of 2 instructional assistants, which would equal the salary of 1 special educator. Now, that worked because we have several type of instructional assistants. We have instructional assistants that are program instructional assistants that are assigned to one of our intensive learning centers, perhaps. We have instructional assistants that are wed to students, and then we also have grade level instructional assistants that were going into classrooms and doing almost what Mrs. O'Coin had said about supporting a classroom. So those are the instructional assistants. Those grade level instructional assistants are the folks that principals were willing to give trade-in to, for example, to get this. Now, when I say trade-in, it's important to know that that was on paper, and it did not translate to any layoffs within our district. People moved, people were reassigned. We did not have any layoffs, but monetarily, and again, Mr. Matthew can probably speak more to the magic of how that worked. But, so that was last year. But we've used a lot of those general education instructional assistants. So we're gonna need to get creative on how we do that this year.
Yeah, because it's not just for the public to know. It's not 2 teachers and we're doubling the class size.
Right.
It's the same,
And some
similar.
of it is shifting a model and shifting student education plans. So we still have special education teachers that are not doing a co-teaching model. We still have special ed teachers that are doing a small group. So there is the possibility that by shifting services, that some of those teachers can then be trained and moved into a small group model. So again, that's going to be part of our bigger fall planning this fall in terms of what's the model of delivery going to look like, how are we going to do the expansion, how does that translate financially.
Yeah, because most of the special ed teachers were doing the pull-out model.
Yes.
But now you'll have some of them doing the in-class model, so it won't add to the budget.
Right.
We still have the same amount of
In
teachers.
essence, last
Only
year-
working on different models.
Yeah, we are gonna have an impact, though.
Eventually,
It's
because you'll run out
that's
of
what I'm
trade-offs.
saying.
There's only so many you can trade off. Like this year, we traded off, we saved, if we had 20 we had like, how many, 50 instructors, we have a lot of instructors, it was some crazy number.
Yeah, in essence, it turned out to be a trading.
2 for 1.
Having eliminated, or reducing 2 instructional assistant positions and creating this new special education
But see,
teacher
the problem
position.
is now we've done that, those instructors are gone, that's the major issue for next fall. That's what you're addressing, that we have nobody to trade off anymore, they've all been traded,
But
basically.
although, in some, again, it's going to take looking at students and service delivery plans for these students, because there are some students that, through conversations with the team process, could perhaps work in a model like this. And if we have enough students that are identified like that, then we can take the existing special education
Right.
teachers and move them into that
But they all
classroom.
be the same grade and
So
everything.
this year, to initially start, each building, in essence, hired 1 new special education teacher. But we're not necessarily gonna need that number-wise. I think Mr. Packard School especially has done very well this year with looking at his ratio students and having them in an inclusion setting and having 1 teacher to support some of those pull-out classrooms. So it's gonna be an ongoing conversation, but I don't foresee that we're gonna need 8 or 7 like we did last year of,
And again, I'm all
of
for
brand
it.
new
It's just
teachers.
something we as a committee need to be, keep in mind.
Exactly, we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, that's all. And I'm sorry, I'm not quite finished.
What else is new?
What else is new? Thank you. What was the plan for, I know you had this great feedback, was outstanding. Continuous feedback. I don't know, surveys, I don't know what your thoughts are, but from students, from parents, from teachers, just to how are you gonna engage those areas?
And I think we hoped part of the program evaluation.
Yes, exactly. The program evaluation that we're in with DESE will provide us with some tools to help do
Okay,
that.
great, just to continue to get feedback.
Yep, came at a great time.
Perfect. And my final question, training again, I know you might have brought it up, Ms. Aries, on professional development. I don't know if you want to refresh my memory, that's part of the upcoming professional development, more of this training, bringing those consultants in?
So those consultants will not necessarily be coming in this year, because we have a strong enough core that we can continue to do a train the trainer. And
Oh, okay.
these teachers that have done it for the year almost become the pros. So there may be a case where we need to bring them in, for a session, but as far as doing a big general training with the intensity level that we did before, we are equipped within the district now to be able to do that here with our staff and our teachers.
And I don't have a problem with that, but there is something also to be said to bring in outside
Agreed. Right.
support. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Right.
I think you need to kind of evaluate that. That's my opinion. Thank you very, very much.
Do you mind? I just had a question about, they had asked about, like, being able to go visit other schools that do this as well. I didn't know if we built in any release time for them to be able to do that.
It's not necessarily built in, but the principals are never object to
Perfect.
people who want to go do that.
Okay, great,
Mhm.
thank you.
It's just finding the right fit.
Absolutely.
I was just wanted to add, when I watched that, and I hadn't seen that, so it just made me laugh, because indeed, just as Mrs. Terry said, I said to Mrs. Pacheco, like, that is so right on for that student. Just knowing the way some of those students learn so much better with a smaller group. But the piece that keeps resonating with me is when you think about, and again, some special ed students with unique challenges need that pull-out model. But what happens is our special ed teachers who are so used to working in their enclosed environment with their own students often lose that comparison to what is the rest of our student population doing. So by bringing in that special ed teacher to pair with that general education teacher, that special education teacher is always aware, okay, now I know by nature of my student, they need support, and they're not at quite the level they need to be, but at least I have a constant feedback from this gen ed teacher of what can we do together to bring these students where they need to be, and always has that, okay, this is where the rest of the population is, and I mean, our goal is that gap gets smaller and smaller by this unique combination of these two. For me, just seeing, and I will tell you, it goes the other way. We've had inclusion classrooms for, a couple of years at Heritage School where the special ed teacher just might come in as Mrs. As Pauline, I guess, Mrs. O'Coin said, for ELA or math, and often the gifts and talents that our special education students have, and they turn around and share with their gen, and I've been in classrooms, and I can't tell which student is on an IEP, because the gen ed students are learning just as much from working with their special education. It's just amazing, and then I think of the adults, we're doing this for the kids, but when I think of the adults learning from each other, teaching is a lonely business, and I think for the years, I was a classroom teacher, I taught kindergarten and first grade for 15 years. I never got to see what anyone else is, or bounce an idea off someone. So now, and then I had the pleasure of working with Linda Hackinson, and when Linda and I would work together, she would be, that's a great idea. No, that's a great idea. You have that camaraderie and collaboration that's only going to make their teaching so much stronger. So I think it's a win-win for everyone, and you had heard that teacher say, and we're thinking that we're really, hopefully that gap is going to get smaller, but our students who need that challenge, now, there's an extra teacher in that room that can say, okay, we know we have 3 kids that if we assign a project, they can work independently and move with it. So I think, all around, we're going to see great things with this. And the whole piece of parity, the 2 heritage teachers that were talking in that video, they actually came in this summer and put new cushions on their chairs so their chairs would be matching. So she's like, we have to have the same chair. So they actually did a little upholstery work in the summer, so they would, and it's just fascinating. The girls said we have 2 classrooms, because those were 2 third grade teachers who one had a dual certification as a special ed, who have worked side by side for a couple of years. For them, this was a gift in the most natural collaboration. So we were able, they worked together most of the time, but the special education teacher, when her environment needs to even be a little quieter, will go next door and be able to work with those students in the small. So, I mean, I know we're only in, week 4 of school, but I can already see that both teachers and students are thriving in these classrooms.
And the thing Mrs. Pastore really targeted too, that I don't think we emphasized enough in this video, was that higher end of learning. And we began to implement this knowing what it would do for our struggling learners. But I think to think about what it does to challenge our students is just as important. And when Mrs. Ayers and I went into the classrooms, we were randomly just saying, okay, come on, do you want to come? 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 We didn't go in with our list to say, okay, has special needs, who's struggling, who's a gifted learner, who's on grade level. So we found it really interesting watching the student videos that it didn't matter which end of the spectrum, if they were on a struggling learner, if they were gifted, if they were somewhere in between, and what we might just call an average student. They all had really similar answers about why it supported them. And that was really interesting, I thought, to hear as well.
Can I just add one thing, if I may? I had a conversation with 2 8th grade boys sitting at the table where you're sitting right now at the end of school tonight. They said, Mr. Packard, for the first time, I feel like all the other students. I have an opportunity to learn at the same pace, and I don't feel as though that I am not being placed in a class because I'm not supposed to be there. And my heart just went, oh my God. They said, that sums the whole thing up right there. And they're thriving, both of them, better than they've ever done before, and their confidence is just soaring. So that's what I want to add.
That's great.
I have something to add. If we're going to be adding, I just want to add that the social aspect of these kids having 2 teachers in their classrooms and what they're learning from watching the 2 teachers interacting has been amazing. You can just see them light up. They see the teachers using humor with each other. They see the teachers being nice give and the take of personalities and how we get along. And that's what I see. The kids are just in awe of watching their teachers coordinate how they're talking and how they're getting along. That's
great. That's
Mrs.
great.
Allen, I want to tell you something on a totally different aspect of it. When you talked about the different models, the 6 different models, my co-teaching teams are writing their goal where they're going to see parity among the 6 models. So they're making a data sheet. And so that every day they're making sure that all of the different models are being done. They're writing their goal specifically to do that.
Good, we can have that data.
I was just gonna say that, let's share that. That's awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Sage, you wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
my ideal, and some of the kids were real advocates for this, was not having any classrooms more than maybe 15 students. But we'll never see that in the public sector. We see that in a lot of the private sector. But I also want to put a cautionary note that when you have 2 teachers teaching different things in the same room, I would have a real problem with that as a learner, because I have the situation where I hear you talking, but I also hear you talking, and I bounce back and forth between conversations and I get completely lost. So I hope if the teachers are in that kind of situation, they're aware of the learning styles or the learning distractions of some of their students.
Absolutely, and that was one of the things that had been discussed in the training, and how do you set your room up? I mean, that picture made it look like they were literally on top of each other.
Right.
But certainly you set up your classroom so that there's areas, there's boundaries in between. Like Mrs. Pastore said, sometimes there's an open space, so you can both parallel teach, but one might be in one space and one's in another space.
But I would have that difficulty in that situation. I'm so glad all of you were quiet while they were talking. I could listen to you and them and completely lost.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, that was excellent.
Okay, next on the agenda, Massachusetts School Building Authority, senior study site visit. Mr.
Madam Chair and School
Lamache.
Committee, we had the Massachusetts School Building Authority come and visit us. Was that last week?
It was
Yes,
indeed.
It was?
It
Felt
seems
like
so
yesterday.
far.
No, it felt like yesterday to me. We had a great representative group attend. We had the executive director for the organization attend. We had project managers, we had consultants. I thought that their questions were excellent. They were very thorough in their process. I know school committee members attended as well. Feel free to jump in at any time. And then they took a tour. One of the things that I continue to reiterate, and I said early on, is that, understanding what I know now, I feel very comfortable saying that this would be a renovation project for our district, for Shepherd Hill. It wouldn't be a complete knockdown construction building. Mainly for the fact that the envelope is extremely well, with the exception of the roof. The actual construction of the building, I continue to hear from everybody, from Jerry Millette, how well-built the building is, but the systems in the building are dated. The HVAC system, the heating system, the electrical systems, so there certainly needs to be some work around those operational systems. But the three, aside from that, the 3 major priorities that we discussed with Mass School Building Authority for our district and for Shepherd Hill moving forward is, number 1, programmatic space. If you look at some of the science classrooms in that building, there's not a lot of space in some of those science classrooms for some of the 21st century skills and labs that we're trying to teach our students and have them participate in. If you look at our performing arts space, it's certainly functional, but it could certainly use some remodeling and revamping. But other space needs to be in there for 21st century skills, some PBL, iStudio, Innovation Studio, Idea Labs, what have you, integration labs for multi-disciplines within the school. So that's some of the programmatic space that really needs to be addressed within that building. The next was is ADA compliance. The building is not ADA compliant. It wasn't a thing when the building was built. The district has done a great job of trying to add ADA compliance going along, but as we discussed with Mass School Building Authority, is if we were to try to address everything at once, we just couldn't financially do that. And it's tough to prioritize and pick one thing off at a time. It would take us 30 years to address just ADA compliance within that facility. And then the last thing, which is critical in this current day and age, is school safety. To address school safety within that building and bring it up to into a 21st century school that addresses school safety. So one example is a vestibule for the entranceway of the main entrance of that particular school. What I've been commonly called like a man trap, you know, a place where there's a space in between with some updated communication systems as well. But those were really some of the highlights that we talked about. Then they took a tour of the building. I thought they were very thorough in their tour, took some notes, took plenty of pictures, which I thought was great. And, you know, from an outside person coming in, the building looks great, but there are certain things that need to be addressed within that building. And when I say the building looks great, that's hats off to the maintenance department, to you as a school committee, to the community, to invest maintenance. I don't think maintenance of the facility is in question. I think it's the upgrade that's in question. I think it's what's next for 21st century for the Shepherd Hill High School. We're not invited into their program. They said that they would give us feedback by December of this year. As you see in the notes, I sent an email back to Ms. DiCristofaro, who was the lead person from MSBA, who visited our school, Shepherd Hill. And I hope to hear back from her, and we hope to hear something positive. If not, they did give us some information to be able to continue down the road and improve upon our next installment of a statement of interest for Shepherd Hill. So that's my take on it. I don't know if school committee members who attended wanted to say something.
I agree with you that I don't think we would ever be able to sell to the communities to tear the building down because it is so structurally sound. I think rehab is the way to go. And I think also we can't overlook the fact that Jerry Millett is the best asset we can have. He knows that building from inside out. Any question they asked, he knew what was this. We'll have to keep him around even though he's retiring because he knew everything about everything.
He really knew
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, he did. He knew when this was, and what, you can't get these parts, we go get these. I mean, it was.
And he knows everything about how to maintain the
Right,
building
right.
too,
Seriously.
because we have a lot of outdated,
And he keeps it going.
right.
But, so he's a really valuable asset.
Mr. Millett shared with me a while back, when he was employed at Nichols at the time, Shepherd Hill was being built, and he remembers seeing from Nichols the rafters being put up. And so his comment was, this building is structurally sound. It's in a great shape structurally, but as Mr. Lamarche said, it does need components.
Right.
But he commented that Shepherd Hill is his baby, and he cares a lot about it, and he really, so hopefully I'm sure he'll be involved, even though when he does retire, so.
And the meeting went very well, and it seems hopeful.
It does.
It does, it
They
really
weren't out to
does.
get us, they just asked for factual
Right.
things. We told them.
And they wanted to know where our if we're ready for something like
Right,
this.
right.
And I think that we provided a strong message that we are ready, and the communities have awareness that this is something that's coming up, and that we would have to work hand in hand with our communities to move it forward if we are invited into their program. And their program is very sound. I just experienced the program with them. We just had a ribbon cutting at the brand-new school in Bourne that we opened up on this year on Saturday. There were some MSBA folks there, so I made sure that I engaged with them.
Always on the clock.
Let them know where I.
Yeah, right.
I was wearing purple. I was wearing purple.
Had to for that one.
Had to for that one, yes. But it's a win-win process for the district and for the community because there's no wasted dollars. And what I said at the selectmen meeting last night, there is a place for conservatism in this process. It doesn't have to be extraordinary or over the top. There's a place for conservative construction now. Value engineering has come a long way in school buildings, so there is a place for that, and that's the Bourne School is one of the lowest per square foot that's been constructed in about a decade. The final numbers aren't in yet, but most schools are averaging around $500 a square foot. The school in Bourne that we built is around $380 right now, without a final budget. About 10 years ago, they were costing around $290 a square foot, but with an average of 500, I'm confident that, knowing this community as much as I know it now, and in my past experience, that, again, there's a place for conservatism in making a school great moving forward, so.
Mr. Lamarche, could you comment, just for the public, on the, and remind me, myself, what the reimbursement was through the program?
yes.
If we're selected?
Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
That's quite all right, quite all right.
They had mentioned a reimbursement rate, so if anything moving forward, any cost factor, so, for example, if there is a feasibility study required for this process, regardless of whether you're going for a reno or new construction, and they had already stated that we are roughly, they said 59.2, I think, but roughly 60 cents on the dollar.
They had points or something.
They had a 0.2 or something in there too, but it's roughly 60% on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar reimbursement rate for Dudley-Charlton Regional School
It'd be
District.
according to the town, if the town is a poor town, they get a better percent or something like that. It used to be like that. Like in Worcester, they'd get 70% or something.
I think
Well, the
that's
rate
when
they
you're
gave us
building a
is the
school.
blended rate for both towns.
Right, that's what I mean, but some towns, they say, why aren't you getting more? It depends on the what community it is. It's not a
Depends on the
set,
communities, yeah.
it's not a set rate for the state, it depends on where they're doing the building.
That rate is
Correct.
the rate. by
That's the rate we would get.
For us.
Yeah.
For us, for Dudley-Charlton, that's the rate, which is an exceptional rate at 60 cents on the dollar. It used to be a day when it was higher,
Right, I remember, yeah.
70, 90, 80, 90 cents on the dollar. It's not,
And
it
didn't
hasn't been
they-
as high.
Yeah, didn't they say for the building itself, it'd be a couple of points
You could-
more than the 59%?
You could, depending on what you do, you can add more points. So for example, I believe a renovation gives you more points because you're not doing a tear down reconstruct. You get more points for lead points for how you build it and construct it. Green, you get green points, things of that
Right.
nature. So you can add more points. It doesn't balloon from 60 to 90,
No.
but it could be 62, 63 cents on the dollar, which every penny counts.
Exactly.
Every
Right.
penny counts. But it was nice to hear 60 cents on the dollar for
Right.
reimbursement.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lamache.
Thank you.
Consideration to appoint a delegate to the MASC/MASS conference. So every year, we send some school committee members, or everyone can go. I believe Kenny's going. Jamie, are you going this year? No. Kathy? And I think Mary is going. I'm not sure about Stephanie. Sandy, is Stephanie, did she? No, okay.
I'll be there, too.
And
But I can't be a delegate, sorry.
no. So there's always one school committee member from every district that will do the voting on our resolutions that we usually go over. And so who is interested to be the delegate, and they'll be the voting member?
You feel free.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay,
I'll recommend Kenny LaFerrier to be that delegate.
okay. And all in favor? Kenny, you're the
Wow,
delegate. You're the delegate this
Thank
year.
you.
And we did get I got the book in the mail the other day. Yeah, I got the book for the next, but we're not going over the resolutions this evening. With the 2019, he's going to talk about. The 2020 we'll have to put on the agenda.
Yeah, no, I made a mistake when
You did?
What I did, yeah, so it's the new ones that I provided, but I only provided a couple of them, because one of the ones I wanted to talk about was
Oh, I
transportation.
thought you,
But
when
no,
I
yeah,
asked
it's
you,
my
you
mistake,
told me it
yes.
was the old ones.
Sorry, I
Okay.
made a mistake when I said that.
Okay, that's okay. So it is the new ones.
It is-
that
it
we
are the new
going
ones,
over.
but-
And I didn't bring my book.
No, we have copies in our folder.
We do.
I'm not sure if you had a copy of all of them?
Yeah, I got all
Okay,
I don't think I got a copy. Oh, yes,
No.
I did. I do,
Okay.
Kathy. No, when I had gone over the agenda, he said it was the old one, so
Yeah,
that's why
sorry,
I
that's my
didn't-
mistake,
No,
yes.
hey, don't worry
Okay,
about
all right.
it. And,
but the resolutions I wanted to go to point out, which I think is extremely important, is resolution number 3, which was school transportation. And it's really coming up, the state is actually doing their own study of transportation, just because of the limited number of vendors that are available out there. So I thought that was a good resolution, and I'd be interested on how that turns out moving forward. And then I thought it was great that Kaylee, right? Yes, that there is a resolution number 8, which is a resolution to access to menstrual supplies.
See?
So, yeah,
You're
you're
right
right on the
on.
money tonight, so.
Yeah.
So that's that. So make sure you share that with Ms. Flahy, right? Yes, make sure you share that with her.
And so then we'll put on the agenda, we usually go over all of them
Okay.
and decide whether we're going to say yes or no.
It is listed correctly on the agenda.
Aye. See them?
It is,
Do the res-
Okay,
that's on the agenda.
but,
do you want to wait till the next meeting
yeah,
to vote on
I'd
that?
rather table it and wait till next time, because I didn't really even look at the
Yeah,
new ones,
so-
I just
because
got it
made-
the other
I
day.
made a mistake.
I'm gonna keep
I'm full of
blaming
mistakes.
Steve.
Read fast, Mr.
I'm blaming Steve, because I did
Please
ask.
do that. Yes, you did, you did.
I
gave
did
you
ask.
erroneous information.
And he goes, no, it's not the new ones, it's them.
Fine with me, I mean, they said at least let Mrs. Reed and Mrs.
Yeah,
Pansy have.
so I think
Correct,
we'll wait until next
Yeah.
time for that one. And that brings us up to the next meeting dates. School committee meeting, Wednesday, October 9th, and that'll be at the Shepherd Hill Regional High School, 7 PM. Budget and Finance Subcommittee, Tuesday, October 15th, and that'll be at Shepherd Regional High School, and that's 8:30 a.m. Policy Review Subcommittee will be Monday, October 7th, at the Shepherd Hill Regional High School, and that will be 9 a.m. Curriculum Subcommittee for Teaching and Learning, October 17th, at Shepherd Hill Regional High School, 10 a.m. Capital Outlay Subcommittee, and that'll be to be determined. Safety Subcommittee will be Monday, October 21st, Charlton Middle School, 10 a.m.
It's actually 11 a.m.
11,
It's
okay.
actually 11 a.m., yeah.
So, 11 a.m., and that is the Safety Subcommittee, October 21st. And future agenda items, final school choice numbers, MCAS results.
Madam Chair, on MCAS results, I wrote it in an email to the school committee. I would respectfully ask if we could target November, because I'd like to not present MCAS in isolation. I'd like to present something called more like a student achievement report, which would include MCAS, but also other assessments
Right.
within the district that
That'll
we're
be
doing.
fine.
Yep.
So we'll do that for November.
Can I ask you, on November, we have this, it's the second and the fourth Wednesdays, right? So that
Well,
fourth.
in November, we're only
Right, we're only doing
one
one.
meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
one
good.
meeting.
I just
Yep.
want to
Yeah,
make sure.
just one meeting.
Perfect.
We didn't set the date for it.
Are we keeping it
And we
the
didn't set the
13th?
date for December, so we can do that next time,
That would be great.
okay? And new director,
For the Webster Dudley Boys and Girls Club, I think
Oh,
that's
okay.
combined. And I have not connected with them yet.
all right. And how about members? Do you want to add anything?
I will
Kaylee.
not be in attendance on October 9th, but if you guys want me to send my report to Ms. Sullivan, I can get that to you.
You can do
Sure.
that.
And then, I'm sure everyone's seen it, but the ban on juuling passed, so I know we were talking about that last time. Oh, was it in there?
I meant to say
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I saw that Mr. Chaplin sent it out to all of us this morning. I'm not sure if you guys saw, but yeah, so it's pretty exciting. It's good to know.
That includes advertising, so they're not allowed
Yes.
to advertise, they're not allowed to sell anything, they're not allowed to sell anything that could go with it,
Yeah.
that, yeah.
CEO just stepped down today.
Mhm.
Yay, good news.
I was in stores pulling it off the shelves today.
You were? Oh,
Yeah,
good.
that's part of my job.
Did you get Cumberland for us?
Cumberland did it on their own.
Sorry.
No,
That was really important, I'm glad you included.
thank you, Kaylee.
Thanks, Kate.
Anyone else? That's it, and if Steve, if we think of anything else, we'll
Okay,
add on,
yep.
okay? And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.